Right. I would like to first of all start with a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about today, so you have an idea, and then we'll go through the slides. Uh, First of all, I would like to give you this little quote from Rudyard. Davey already knows how much I like reading Dane Rudyard, and this is one of my most favorite authors of astrology and teachers for me personally. And he says this, when you don't follow your nature, there is a hole in the universe where you were supposed to be. And I think this has so much to do with the question about vocation and using our personal potential, which we're trying to analyze through the birth chart most of the time. It really, the way I see it is really that every one of us has a specific task, a specific role to play. And we can get some pointers about this from the birth chart and from all the different combinations of planets and aspects in it, looked at as a whole picture, not just the usual things that we are told by most books of astrology, to look at particular houses, which I'm still going to do today, go into the particulars. But I wanted to make it clear for you that my way of seeing this, especially if someone comes to me for consultations that's meant to be concentrating on work and career, and they want to do some sort of overview of what may be a good career path for them, or what kind of job will be more profitable potentially. We cannot answer this question because unfortunately there are millions of things out there in real life, millions of different professions, topics, concentrations that can fit the same astrological combination. We only have a limited number of words in the astrology vocabulary, don't we? We have 12 signs, 12 houses, and 10 planets. Well, we can include Chiron as well and other things, but we cannot simply say to someone looking at the chart exactly what it is that they need to do in their life. But we can still narrow down the choices a lot and be a lot more specific than if we don't have that knowledge. So my plan for today was to first start by telling you what for me is the one most important factor in the chart that we need to look at first if we want to answer this question of direction for work and for applying our skills in a particular area of life and where to concentrate. You'll see what that is in a second. I'll start from that. Then I will go through the three different approaches to work and to choosing occupation reflected in the three earth houses of the chart, the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th, and we'll make an overview of them. Next, I will speak about different dynamics in these three houses, like aspects between things in them, signs on the cusps, and just go into the three houses a bit more and in a bit more detail to see specifically what we can find there. Then I will go through other factors, because outside of the main usual standard pointers to career, there are several other things, interesting combinations in the charts and so on, and positions of other planets, which I think can sometimes be the thing that weighs the most in the choice of how to choose what you're going to do in life. And finally, and I plan to spend at least 1/3 of the whole time at the end speaking about examples of charts and trying to put the theory into practice. And I've got all of your charts. I've got 7 charts in total, but I will start with those that are here. Those of you that are here. We'll do David's daughter, we'll do Jerry's and Zoe's, and then we've got a few others of other people that signed up for today, and they're probably going to watch the recording. So if you want, we can have a discussion about their charts quickly as well, and just to see the same thing. But I've given you like a breakthrough of how everything I'm talking about in the theory is then going to be extracted from the chart in a way. So it's a bit of a kind of a workshop exercise at the end. So getting started with the sun. The sun in the birth chart, to me personally, and this is one of those topics in astrology where we can argue and we can have different opinions. And I've read and heard many different interpretations of this. what is the most important factor? Is it the ascendant? Is it the whole, the triple sun, moon, ascendant, the big three that we need to look at? But I decided to concentrate on the sun, because to me, the sun is, if we start a little bit backwards and, speak about vocation, a calling, something that is really suited for who we are and what we are as a general main character, a kind of occupation that's not that much to do with how much money we can make out of it, or whether it's going to give us social status or any sort of other material, I don't know, advantage or reward, but it's more about inner satisfaction. This sort of thing that maybe is so related to what we dreamed of doing when we were little kids, and when we didn't have all those social constructs and expectations of society and all those sorts of, then complexes and accumulating factors later that stir us in different directions. But this natural tendency of what we liked, and very often if we at least slightly integrate that in our later choice of work, then this turns out to be something that we don't feel like a real job, one that we need to go through and wait until the end of the day to then switch to something that we're more interested in. But it's really a sense of inner calling. The sun in the birth chart, to me, is the main source of energy. The thing that gives us the direction of where everything else, all the other planets, to me, are like, children, in a way, to the sun. He's the guiding force, he or she. Well, I think more of it as a male conscious directional energy, the sun sign, and also the position of the sun by house and by aspects. All of these three things I think we need to look at together. As you know very well, that we can be, the same sun sign as another person, but when we look deeper into the chart, we see where the differences come from, because the sun is positioned in so many different ways. But it is, to me, the greatest factor that is able to somehow direct us. I'm just admitting somebody else here while we speak. Direct us towards our life purpose, the mission that is to be worked for during many years. We normally don't get to feel the essence of our sun sign from the start, from when we are very young, but it takes time, it takes experience and trial and error to get there, I believe, so that we can understand what is that factor that we need to develop in ourselves, this kind of style of operating and energy of expressing something out there to the world, that is eventually going to become a good example to other people how to work with that energy. I really think that each one of those sun signs that we happen to be born under is a mission of an exemplar, potentially. So we becoming exemplars if we do it right, because I think in 90% of the cases, people really struggle to get in touch properly with the positive qualities of their sun sign. But let's say we do. Let's say we're one of the lucky few that are able to somehow connect with the sun energy and to understand what it requires from us. And in that case, it becomes a very powerful source of vitality. You may have heard this comparison of the sun with an engine of a car, or something that is fueling your inner being with the right kind of fuel, which makes the system run properly, and for everything to work with enthusiasm, with motivation, with vision. It is the vision in us. So if we are able, potentially, I'm thinking, if we are able to integrate that in the choice of profession, and to somehow make sure that what we choose to do is including the qualities of that sign and what this sign is wanting in life, then we have a lot better chance to feel good in the job and to be successful in it as well, in our own particular way. The sun is also a guiding principle in the chart, which is, especially by position in house, I think, is pointing to a particular area of experience where it's always safe to try our to try to do something in that area, even if it's not the main occupation, but some sort of a hobby or a side occupation, then it tends to work in a very satisfactory way, I have noticed, if we pay attention to the house of the sun. Then the sun is this individualistic principle that is making us different in a way from everybody else, and is helping to separate from the matrix of external circumstances, parental patterns, family conditioning, whatever, that may be, somehow redirecting us away from our real main vocational calling. So the sun sign, I mean, from many different perspectives, I think is, if we can designate only one, if we don't have the time to work with someone in depth with the chart, and we still need to give some helpful advice, maybe the safest option will be to look at the sun and the position of the sun, because that's something that is not always as conscious as it's meant to be. As I said, it tends to get conscious over time. But if we can consciously connect with the qualities that this sign is trying to to show off in the world, because the sun is a projecting energy. It's not like the moon, which is more receptive, but it's what we have to contribute out there. And my idea here is that if you contribute according to your prescribed sun sign energy, then there is a much better chance that that thing will be accepted. You will be able to earn your living with it, through it. People are going to appreciate it, and eventually, the bigger picture is also going to appreciate it out there in society, because we are being, in a way, true to ourselves and true to our own inner nature through the sun sign. And if there is something special we can do in life, something unusual, breaking out from a mold, breaking out even from a karmic mold, then this energy of the sun, which I very often envision as a little light at the end of a dark tunnel, as we need to go back to ideas of what to do, how to change things, how to be flexible when we're stuck in a particular situation in life, again through the sun sign, because the sun sign has this visionary ability to get us out of depressive mood as well, and to connect us with this main direction in which we're meant to be going in the first place. So later on, when we look at charts, I will investigate in each one of those charts where is the sun, how is it placed, and what it can tell us about if something will be a better idea than other areas for the person to follow as a professional direction. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is going to be the main thing I'm going to be talking about today. And it's the wheel of the houses, particularly concentrating on the 3 earth houses in astrology, the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th. These are the so-called material houses, and in usual sources you would find that these are the areas of life that are mostly connected to materializing your energies, your skills, your potential, your time, and so on, through some sort of work. But in the 3 earth houses, there are different motives that are pulling us in these directions. And we choose what we do, or we choose what we concentrate on, presumably if we have planets in those houses, or if they are activated by something in the chart. There are different reasons why we decide to become what we decide to become in life. And the 3 houses, now you can look at this wheel as a whole. This is a very general keywords wheel of the houses. They're a lot deeper than that, and there are many more meanings of why we meet these experiences in each one of the stages. I look at them as stages of a process. So the 2nd house is more of a beginner stage of something. Something is getting born and is trying to secure itself as an idea in the 2nd house. Then when we get to the 6th, another process is running, which is kind of a one step forward you would see how when I get there. And the 10th house is the most mature of the three. It's the most societal, the most one that is mixing us with the world and anybody and everything out there, which is exposing us to being watched from a distance and judged from a distance. So we can say, I guess, that there can be three different approaches to work through the three earth houses, and I'm going to go through them one by one so that we can first see what's the meaning of them, and then what sort of dynamics we can see playing out in them. Starting with the second house, and here I'm just trying to position the windows in a way that you guys can see properly. Yeah, I think here at the top is better. Now, the second house is usually called the house of money, and this is so limiting as it's a lot more than that. But it's not just the area of life, going back to generally what the houses are about, or this division of the chart into sections that so much resemble pizza slices of different areas of experience. Starting from the first, where potentially something is beginning a cycle and is very, still an experience and trying to survive more than anything else, and ending with the 12th house, where we are looking at a mature energy, already having been through all the stages of life and all the different experiences, and needing to somehow close a page. But today, I'm concentrating just on three houses, and the second house of money is the first material earth house. All of the earth houses are to do with existing in the material world, the objective reality of everything that could be sensed, touched, felt, smelled, and so on. And could be really proven to exist because we have some sort of empirical data, or we can physically notice it and see it through the senses. And all the three houses are concerned with materializing something out there in the world. But one of the main distinctions is that the second house is doing that on a very personal level. It is concerned about what we do for ourselves, for our own well-being, and material stabilization and prosperity. The sixth house is a step towards another person, or it could be also a group of people, but it's more of a one-to-one relationship. What we can contribute to the world and to people in particular situations to be useful, to be secure, and so on. The 10th house is more societal. Let's see the second house. Here, before we get to possessions, money, attracting wealth, or making what it needs to be done to earn something tangible, there is another underlying issue which is motivating that. And I think that's the sense of inner value and how much we like ourselves, what we value in ourselves, first and foremost, and what we perceive as wealth and as something valuable and something worth giving our time, giving our energy to personally. This all stems from Venus, the planet ruling the second house, because Venus as a function in us is this value judgment about what in life, from other people to our own bodies and our own skills and abilities, to everything visual and ethical and aesthetic out there, we perceive as good or bad, valuable or not that valuable, what kind of price we put on things. This is mostly what this house is about, and this decision has to be made first, everyone for themselves, before we can get to investing into something. Usually when you see a particular planet in the second house, it gives this idea of what we would be willing to invest our money for. For example, if you have Mercury in the second house, you may be more interested in investing your time and resources in educational resources, in books, in courses, in knowledge in general, in information, in entertainment related to, having some sort of exchange, And we can do the same with all the rest of the planets, and think this way, that potentially here in the second house, if we have something going on, it gives us an idea of what we personally value in life and like, what makes us feel good as well. And another very important thing is what makes us feel secure and safe, because this is an early house, the second house. It's very important that it's in the beginning, in the first quadrant of the chart. It's just after the first, and something very primal is going on here. We're trying to protect ourselves. The reason why we want to earn money and to accumulate possessions and to get so attached to them emotionally as well, and if this energy is not played out very positively, we may get into feeling like we are losing ourselves or dying if we lose our possessions. Like if you lose your house, if you lose your car, and so on, all your money and everything that you could have identified with through material possessions. And this doesn't have to happen if we have understood this house properly as the urge to have something, so that the next day is secured and you're able to be yourself. We can say live out your sun and your whole chart without being constantly stressed out from attacks of the environment. For example, having to pay unexpected bills, having to deal with everything falling apart in a particular moment in the material world around you, and you having to take care of it. So if we're not prepared for that, this can be cause of great stress and great anxiety. And so that's the motivation to make money here in the second house, because we want to have a stable base from which we can create, we can live, and we can grow. And usually I've noticed when people have lots of planets in the second house, and this is naturally pulling them in this direction when they choose what to do in life, it's like the number one priority to be a money-making job, one that pays well. They may be willing to compromise in other areas to do an activity which is not exactly suited to what they enjoy doing, or they may be subordinates to people that they don't like, or have to travel too much and tire themselves too much, or the opposite, choose a boring job. But this idea of it has to pay well, it has to be secure, and it has to be like a one that's predictable, because the second house and the sign Taurus, to which it's usually associated, even though they're not the same thing, are energies that are so security oriented and so averse to change. They don't want to be surprised by changing situations and fluctuating flow of resources. So that may be the thing. Even though I believe that we need to never disregard the sun and the other energies in the chart, as I said in the beginning, and to me it's always counterproductive to do something that's completely putting your sun into disregard. If someone has a lot of things going on in the second house, maybe I would advise that it's not such a bad idea to choose a well-paying job, or at least make sure that this is one of the boxes that are being ticked when they have to make a decision, especially if they have different choices to fluctuate between. So it's very difficult to say and to designate one particular thing, but if the second house is strong, I think we need to try to solve the inner dilemma first of are we using our resources properly? Because it may be a situation that we do earn a lot, we happen to make it happen. It's the existence of planets in the second house is a condition of being able to attract resources through the qualities of that planet. For example, if you have the moon there, you can be someone that through the caretaking qualities of your own character, if you do these sorts of things in these areas, you would be able to attract money to yourself and resources to yourself. But the main question at the end of the day is what you do with these resources, how you manage them. And this is the big question in the second house. Are we mismanaging what we have? Because if we are, then it's never enough. And we may get into this perpetual never-ending circle of working for money all our life and never feeling secure, never feeling that's a point where we can say enough is enough, and now I can concentrate on spending that deliberately to do something that's more important than money eventually, and put it into another level this way. So yes, the need to make it right with the use of resources in this house. And here, because things are so personal, I think not many people realize that making the decisions that we need to make in the second house is very much about who we are. Like this quote, wanting to be someone else is a waste of the person you are. What lives in the second house is also our own inner resources that are not material, that are not tangible. It's about skills, knowledge, hereditary conditions, for example, having a strong body or having a good memory, or having certain sort of cultural background in a positive way that was given to us by our parents. We find in the second house things that we have found there, taken for granted in the beginning when we were young. They were usually conditions given to us also by our parents or by somebody else. Later on in life, our own money and our own possessions that we managed to accumulate and to earn. But all those sorts of things are there to strengthen our own sense of who we are and what we are. Because after the first house, in which it's only an impulse, in the first house in the ascendant, we are only waking up for something that we feel inside ourselves that is, our desires. But here in the second house, we need to make it real. We need to get real in this house and to get for our lives, usually through money and through buying and accumulating the kind of material environment things, for example, the house you live in, the environment in which you live in, that is a reflection of who you are, a reflection of your tastes and your values. And this becomes an example. I would say go straight into the second house without, thinking about other things too much, mostly if the sun is there or if personal planets are there and more than one, because otherwise we may get into the trouble of becoming materialistic. And this materialism is a compensation for not feeling secure in what we are able to do. And one of the best advice is probably for people, especially with difficult planets in the second house, like Saturn in the second or Uranus or Pluto, is to try and gain their own independent material base, earn their own money, even if it's only on the side. So if you have planets in the second house, maybe you have another job, which is the main job, or you're getting help from family, from your partner, from other sources that are just conveniently there. But if you have planets in the second house, I think you need to make an effort to at least have a little bit that you have earned and you have gathered completely on your own, because nothing more helps the feeling of satisfaction and personal value and personal kind of strength than doing that. And if not this, then another idea could be to try and gain a skill and become good in something that you're not naturally good in, just because it's an innate talent, but something that you're interested in but needs a bit of effort to get there. So that then this becomes an asset that can be exchanged for money. And say you learn how to play the piano, and then you can go out and give piano lessons. So this is the sort of dynamic I'm talking about. It's not about becoming a specialist in this thing, but it's gaining a skill for the sake of exchanging it with someone else. So I would move on now to the sixth house. It was meant to be just a quick overview of how they differ and what's really the concentration in each one of them, and then we can become a bit more looking in examples. The sixth house is different. We are now again it's to do with the earth territory, with materialism and producing something, building something which is tangible. They're all meant to be. But here, the idea is really to become very good in a particular field for the sake of the thing that you're doing, for the sake of the actual craftsmanship of the job. And the reason why we're having this here in the sixth house, so there were several houses in between the second and the sixth, and what was going on in these consecutive houses, if we imagine the whole wheel of the houses as a journey of trying out different things and going through different crises in life. The sixth house is one of the most crisis-oriented points among all the 12. It's probably this one and the 12, the opposite to it, that are the most difficult to exist in, especially if you have many planets, like I happen to have in the sixth house. It is stemming from an initial sense of that you're not doing it right, that something is not working, that something needs to be corrected or improved or made better. And the reason is that in the previous houses, there were many actions being performed, especially in the fifth house of creativity, the one before the sixth. Lots of trial and error, and being out there, expressing yourself, getting feedback. You were not always strong. In the sixth house, we're meeting a personal crisis of having to reform ourselves. And we are trying to reform first and mostly ourselves here in the sixth house to improve our abilities, because something presumably happened before the sixth house which made us feel inadequate. And this sense of inadequacy is very typical for people that have a lot of things going on in the sixth house. They feel like they constantly need to improve of themselves. They very rarely feel like they're doing a good job in what they do, and that's one of the reasons why they're so persistent in their motivation to, work harder and harder and harder into becoming, very, very good specialists in that field. But then the other thing is that it has to be useful. It has to be doing a service, and that's one of the key words for the sixth house, to someone else or to something else. In the sixth house, we have to be repairing something, improving something, or giving advice, some very concrete, specific advice of how to make things better, and to use, resources, knowledge, presumably all those things that we accumulated in the second house. Here is a chance to make something with them and make a difference to the life of other people. The sixth house is still underneath the horizon. So we still haven't started connecting in personal one-to-one relationships, but it's a preparation for that. And because it is, it's a lot of what we do here is happening behind the scenes. A lot of professions and jobs which are concentrating on tasks that people perform in their own homes or in some closed offices somewhere, or not in public, or not even in the company of other people, but knowledge or tasks or crafts or all sorts of things you can imagine that we do in our own time when we can properly concentrate and we can isolate ourselves into some sort of comfortable environment. This is the house connected to Virgo, and you know how picking and critical Virgo can be as an energy. In this house, we need that isolation from time to time in order to be able to prepare. A lot of preparation happens here. And the job that we do, if we choose it according to the sixth house, needs to have a meaning, needs to have a purpose. And we have to be doing it not just for ourselves, like we did. We could do that easily in the second house without problem. And that won't be a misuse to the right prescription in the chart. But in the sixth house, you need to make sure that what you do is valuable for another. And here we've got all those relationships of mentorship, somebody being the teacher of another or the student of another, apprenticeship, the question of lineage, of this transfer of knowledge and abilities from one person to another over the generations. In relationships in families, we can see that with not that much with the parents and the children, but more with extended family. How members of your extended family can become, these sixth house mentors, like aunts and uncles and grandparents, for example. They can be the source of this advice, and then you pass on and you carry on forward. But if we look at jobs, then the most important thing in the sixth house is not to be recognized, out there as somebody famous or prominent. The most important thing here is to be good in what you do, and to be competent. So this has to be also noticed, and somebody has to say, yes, you're doing a great job. But the mere recognition of that is enough, usually, for people that are concentrating on the sixth house. Neither money, nor fame, nor prominence is motivating them as much as this inner feeling of, being a good example of something, and changing the environment, changing the lives of others. Lots of doctors, by the way, and lots of psychiatrists, or people that, on the other hand, it could be mechanical professions, where you are literally repairing things, like car mechanics, or construction workers or builders. We have not to forget that these workhouses, they're very material, and something really needs to be left there after we have worked on it. And even after we are gone, we need to have left something that could be useful to another person, or could have changed their lives in one way or another. So yeah, I think you get a picture here. I'm kind of starting to repeat myself, but there really is this sense of devotion that can get born in this house to something, an idea, a job, a task that is in itself more interesting and more important than real relationships out there with people, or anything that you get for yourself. It's not very selfish. It's actually a very service-oriented thing. And there is something sacrificial in the sixth house, like being willing to give a lot of yourself, to invest a lot of your energy, to spend even your own money for others without having a proper return. And very often people need to be reminded how to balance this here in the sixth house, and how to not allow to get into these very typical unequal relationships where you become literally the servant of someone, not because they wanted that from you. Very often it's self-imposed. You get yourself there into this scenario because the urge to be useful and to be somehow helpful is so strong in the sixth house that I can say from experience, I get carried away into this. And there needs to be a balance, similar to what we said about the second house, how if you get carried away in accumulating resources, you forget that you actually need all this money in order to do something with them, to make them circulating. Here also, if we don't remember that we need to preserve our own well-being, our own health, and good shape. This is the reason why in this house we talk about issues of health and everyday routine, and what we actually do as a performance of a task, not that much as a profession, but more as a, what happens on the job as an activity. In the sixth house, we may overburn. With all this desire to be useful, we may become too tired or to exhaust our resources. And this gets completely counterproductive, as now we're no longer able to serve and to give if we haven't taken care of ourselves to start with. So that's extremely important, I think, in the sixth house. Okay, I really liked that, just to finish with that, I really like that quote from one of the books of Stephen Forrest. Actually, he repeats that a lot in many of his books when he speaks about the sixth house. God grant me that today I do work that matters. This is really like the motto of the sixth house people, I think. As there is nothing that gives more satisfaction than looking back into the product of what you created, or into the product can be anything, including the reaction of someone that you helped. And this is such a motivating force. So you may notice how people with a lot of sixth house tend to accumulate work during their lifetime. That is like a legacy, could be a legacy. And if we don't do this, if we have a lot of sixth house and we don't make that effort, we may feel like our life has passed without meaning, even if we have learned a lot of money, or if somebody has recognized this as, out there in society. This just doesn't work as well. Okay, now the most typical house of career, and the go-to house of what shall I do in order to be successful in this usual way that I can say is accepted nowadays to understand by success most of the time, even though you know how personal that is, and the definition of success is completely different depending who you ask. But we understand in this house that now things are getting to the level of exposure. We can't hide behind the walls of our house anymore, or just pretend that we can do a quiet job and get recognition in the way that the 10th house requires to be recognized. Because here it's very social. It's not personal anymore. It is extremely personal in the sense that we need to apply ourselves, first of all, the sun, and we need to show the world now what we're capable of. And this world needs to give us a reward. And not always that's financial. Many famous people have spent a lot of their career earning very little in terms of tangible, possessions, but they have been enjoying the fame and the recognition and this exemplary status. This house is really concentrated around the issues of status and recognition. It's what people think of you and how they see you from a distance without knowing you personally. It's almost like being on the TV, or being like someone, an influencer to the greater public, of people that you may never get in touch with in real life, and they would never have a real feel of who you are as a person, neither you of them, something that is very possible in the 6th house. But here it's almost like virtual reality, as the 10th house represents our social reputation, our social image. And usually nowadays, this is the quickest way to wealth as well. And that's why many people are interested how to get there. Unfortunately, not every chart is concentrated on the 10th house. Actually, I don't know whether it's unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I believe we all have a role to play. And not everyone is meant to have something to do with the 10th house. As glamorous and as interesting it may look most of the time, but only a certain percentage of people are born with, usually when there are planets in that house, there is such a potential. Only potential. We never know what's really going to happen, and whether really these planets are going to give them the fame and the recognition. But we can say that it's more likely that if you have planets in the 10th house, you can choose a profession which is one that society somehow has invented as one that's desirable or useful or part of the big picture. It's contributing something to the group. The important thing here is that you contribute something to the group, and you're able to invest yourself in that. So the usual, prestige professions come all here. Many people go to them not because they're genuinely interested in the actual trade of what they're doing with this profession, like lawyers or doctors or whatever. Financial professions as well here are very one of those, or to do with the arts and with creativity. Somehow you can be exposed in that way for the fame of it and for the recognition of it, and not that much as we saw in the sixth house, because they like doing this thing. So it's a matter of priorities, I think, at the end of the day. But here in the 10th house, there is another thing which is very often missed or not talked about, and which I think is hugely important. Is how this is one of the parental houses in the birth chart, where we can see some clues about what was the situation around our parents when we were young, the growing up environment, especially the mother. But not always. I mean, there is also an argument here, which the 4th house and the 10th house, these opposite houses, which one of the two is the mother and which is the father. But let's say that both of the parents can live here in this house. There is this connection between what our background expects from us to become when we grow up in terms of job and profession, and what we choose to do. And I think a very important decision needs to be made in the 10th house, especially if you have planets there, for this decision to be personally made. You can be motivated by whatever you want to be motivated, as long as you have chosen that yourself after a self-analysis, and maybe ideally if you know your astrology or your psychology better, and you are able to match the job with your mission and with your purpose, then there is a very much higher chance that this is going to work out well, instead of climbing the wrong mountain of following a professional path which has been chosen by your family, for example, or has been imposed because you really wanted to please, say, your father or your family in general, and to prove something to the world, to other people. That's actually not your inner calling and your inner vocation. This really is the house of inner real vocation and calling. And this is because that's where we apply who we are, we mix who we are with the big picture. And the kind of astrology that I do and the way I think about it is that it's always a two-way road of individualism and collectivism. So you cannot just be yourself and not take part in anything, but you cannot just be a participant in something and forget about yourself. So the two feed each other. So here, I think the personality, the whole chart in the 10th house needs to really carefully choose how to apply itself in something that would matter out there in the world, and to be a participant in the big game, even if it's a very small contribution. A significant success in the 10th house is not one that makes you very famous or very wealthy. I think a significant success here is exactly this, that you have somehow managed to hit the nail on the head and choose the right way to apply yourself and to apply who you are in the job that you choose. And inevitably, though, this will be tested through achievement. Here, we don't get satisfaction, and we may feel like it didn't work if there isn't this achievement at the end. It's interesting, probably, if you want to explore what happens in the 11th house after the 10th. I'm not going to go through it very much, but what goes on in the 11th house of every chart is the result of what happens in the 10th. So in the 10th, we usually have either a success or a failure in this big, ambitious endeavor, because we tend to be ambitious in the 10th house. It's the ultimate, urge for being greater, being better, being something grander than where you started from. And it never always works. And not always because you didn't choose right. Sometimes the conditions were difficult, and not much was able to be achieved. In other cases, there were external forces out there that were opposing us, usually societal forces or things to do with the times that we were born in, because this is one of the late houses. So then in the 11th house, we deal with that, with the success or with the failure of the 10th. So it's never once and for all decided thing in the 10th house. We eventually have a chance to, even if it didn't work, to change direction, to choose another career. I've seen many cases where people reinvent themselves, especially if they have planets in the 10th house. They could have worked something during, let's say, the first 20 years of their life, and then they realize at some point later, usually around the midlife crisis, that this was not the right career choice, and they want to switch, and they managed to switch to something else. And in that case, it's possible to be done, and it's possible to be directed. Probably that happens so often in the 10th house because of this other thing I mentioned before of the parental influence, how we are very likely to get outside of our own way when we are young, and quickly jump into a course of a career, just because we want to get this out of our way, and we want to be left alone and not under pressure by other people, society or parents that are expecting something, only to discover later on that this was not the right thing for us personally. But yeah, it's all those things mixed up, I guess, all those factors mixed up in the 10th house, which makes it potentially the most success-bringing house, but it's also the most risky territory, as if we get it wrong here, it takes a long time and a lot of effort to start again and to do something different. Okay, now I'm going to change things a bit and move on to the next slide. Here, I want you to see how this, triple energy of the 3 Earth houses can be combined. They make a natural trine. The 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th in the chart, they make a natural trine. So my 6th house style, because we've got a lot of planets in the 6th house, method, and one of the things that we people of the 6th house are very concentrating on is building those methods of work, how to do things. So I have decided for myself that if someone asks about career and advice about job and so on, in what order am I going to analyze things, and how I'm going to look for clues? So I just wanted to share with you my method in my way. Of course, you can do it in different ways. But first of all, I look at houses, whether there are planets in these houses, in the 2nd, 6th, or 10th house. That will be the first indication. In the moment when we start looking in charts, you would see that the very first thing I'm going to list for every one of those charts is, does the person have anything in the Earth houses? And this can start giving us some ideas about whether, if they only have in one of these houses, the motivation towards the work will be really guided by one of these 3 things that I talked about before, or there will be a mixture. And ideally, if there is a connection between planets in the Earth houses, then we can have a job where we feel really motivated by the actual activity, 6th house, but this can at the same time bring us money, and we can be well paid for it. Or if the 2nd and the 10th are related, then by our prominent profession, we can also earn something intangible. So you're looking for connections between planets, first of all, whether they are planets at all in these houses, and then whether they make aspects to each other. Because if they happen to make aspects, these are usually going to be trine aspects because of the natural trine of the Earth houses. Not always, sometimes things are falling into these houses, but they're out of sign or out of house, so they don't exactly make the aspect. But if there is this aspect, then that is presumably a naturally easy flowing energy between the functions of the planets in these houses, if that makes sense. Yeah. Especially important it will be, I think, if we find the sun in one of the career houses, because that's a very literal pointer towards career. If your sun is not in one of these three houses, then I don't think that it will be good to feel negative about not being able to easily and quickly find your job and your vocation and occupation. If you're fluctuating, if you're not, stable in a particular course of action and you're changing and experimenting, maybe that's what your sun requires. And it's not its business in this lifetime with this chart to fixate on being productive and being, realizing something through the actions of these three houses. But it's somewhere else. So many people get depressed or worried by, especially comparing themselves with others around them. If they're not easily finding a good job or a well-paying job or something that they feel interested in, and they think that there is something wrong with them. But I think it's very possible that this simply doesn't happen to be your concentration if the sun is not in one of those three houses, or there isn't a lot of planets in them. Then the next thing I look at is what are the signs on the cusp of the three houses and the rulers of the signs. So I don't know how familiar you are with this. Maybe you know this already, and I'm just, repeating something here. But many people ask me, but what if I don't have a planet in the 2nd, 6th, or 10th? What do I look for as ideas about what to do? And then the answer usually is, look at the sign on the cusp of the house. And we'll see in the examples later, but let's suppose your 2nd house is starting from I don't know, from Gemini, for example. Then the ruler of your 2nd house will be the planet Mercury. And we just check in the chart, where is Mercury located? In what house and what sign is Mercury? And then this can give us a lot of information about through what kind of activity we can earn money, or we can have resources, or we can build, all the sorts of things that are to do with the 2nd house. If you have Venus on the cusp of so let's say the cusp of your 6th house is Libra, for example, then Venus is ruling your 6th house. And you need to see where Venus is in the chart and how to use these qualities of, maybe making aesthetic choices, or being somehow bettering the environment or beautifying the environment. Many, many things it could be related to Venus, to create something as a craft, or as a, something that you produce out of yourself in the 6th house, and so on. Then I look at, maybe even this is not enough, and more is needed, more information is needed. Then we can also look at the natural rulers of the Earth houses. And there are these three planets: Venus for the 2nd, Mercury for the 6th, and Saturn for the 10th. Saturn many astrologers use Saturn as an indicator of career. I mean, this is another option, because Saturn is this energy in us that is making us feel like there is an obstruction, a difficulty, something we need to work on. We need to put a bit more effort in order to overcome. This sense of overcoming is often there. So we're motivated to work in the area of Saturn, where Saturn is placed in the chart also, to, better ourselves. And many people choose their career. Very, very many things are related there to the sign of their Saturn, or to the house of their Saturn in the chart. I don't know if you have noticed anything like this going on. Then next thing is aspects. Aspects are extremely important because they are the dynamic energy linking everything that's going on in the chart. And aspects between planets in the Earth houses, I already said, are the most powerful indicators that this person is going to be able to relate to and to operate and to use those material energies in life very effectively, much more effectively than others that don't have that, and will be able to pull the strings of what it takes to advance in what they're doing. And finally, there are probably many more things, but finally we have to limit ourselves somewhere when we analyze a chart, I think, because otherwise it becomes very, very confusing, and we may not be able to extract any meaning if we get bogged down into too many things that we analyze out there. But stelliums, I have noticed that stelliums are extremely powerful. If you have many planets in one house, and it doesn't have to be, or in one sign, it doesn't have to be the earth houses or the earth signs, in any house. Maybe we've got somebody that has absolutely nothing going on, no planets in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th, but they may have a full 11th house, for example, many planets in the 11th house. And even if the sun is not there, but several planets, more than 3 is the condition for a stellium. So 3 or more planets. Then we can see that they would be pushed in their life, the circumstances of their life, because the houses are ultimately where life happens to us. And even if we don't know any astrology, and we are not able to really verify that through the chart, we can see that every time a full house has brought to the person the kinds of things that this area of life, is about, and they were able to try them. They were able to experience them in one way or another. And most of the cases, this comes to play through the job and through the, what you do every day, what you decide to do for a living as well. And it's also an indication of what you're meant to do, because a full house means that it is really your job to get involved in these activities. You've got something to contribute there. You're potentially strong there. And it's not just a coincidence that you are attracted to these things and you want to take part. So, yeah, a full house is very literally an indication of what to choose. The 11th house, for example, directly tells us that you have to be mixing with people, getting involved with groups, and somehow combining your own energies with a common cause, with something greater, something that is pulling all you people together to fight for the same thing and to work for the same thing, which is ultimately not personal. Okay, so we look at, I hope this is not too much theory. I deliberately try to jump more quickly through the theory, so we have more time for examples, and we have more time to look at charts. I know you are also astrologers in a way, so I hope we can discuss the charts together. It's not just me telling you what I see in them, but trying to discover together what's going on. I wanted to very briefly touch on other factors before we get to the charts. How we are with time. Could you tell me what's the time? Because I don't have anything in front of me to see.
5:30 now.
5:30. Okay, great. So we have time now to properly look at charts. But before that, just a few more pointers about what to look for in the chart as career signatures, as these things can also be extremely powerful. And let's just mention them, because sometimes they are giving us the answer of why someone decided to follow the path that they did, and why it actually worked. Now, when we speak about the moon, it's very emotional. The motivation of the moon is to appease something, to make us feel good, to make us feel safe. And it's not like the sun. The sun has to be consciously connected to. We really need to make the effort to understand it, to direct it. With the moon, things are a lot more compulsive. They tend to be like that. We can get ourselves into trouble sometimes when we follow the moon urges, because there are charts where the moon is in conflict with the sun. If your moon is square the sun or opposite the sun, or it's just inhabiting a house and a sign that's completely different. So if you happen to choose to go into the direction of the moon sign, then you may be doing that to the expense of your sun. And the reason why you're doing that this way is because the moon just makes us feel good. It makes us feel protected. and somehow the senses and the inner being are nourished. The big key word about the moon, nourishment. So it may be a decision made on emotion, in other words, which doesn't make it a bad decision, because sometimes, and you would see in some of the example charts, a lot of them have the moon in the 10th house, which is a bit of a paradoxical, including Davy's daughter's chart as the moon in the 10th house, which is linking the moon to the choice of career. So we definitely cannot disregard that moon in that case. We need to pay attention to the moon. And sometimes the moon is so strategically placed like this that we can realize that the person has to get in touch with their own inner feelings and intuition when they choose what they do. And then eventually, especially if it's in the 10th house, they can become contagious with that. They can transfer their feelings nature or what they do in the job as a caretaking function to other people through the function of the moon. Because the moon is a relationship planet, it builds bridges between us and other people. So it could be a very powerful tool also in work, even though it sounds like it's something more homely. It's not always just our own personal business, the moon. It could become a tool in career. And then the ascendant is another important point in the chart. This natural way of expressing ourselves and of how we promote the sun, how we promote the whole chart, or how we're trying to hide it. This is normally the line in which I try to generally think about the ascendant, of this automatic expression of temperament that is either appeasing something more turbulent going on in the chart, or it's kind of toning it down. But in any case, with our ascendants, Liz Green is saying the traveler, the person is the sun, but the journey is the ascendant. So the journey is like the kind of experience, and the whole first house actually, not just the point on the ascendant, is this how we automatically react to what comes our way, and it's a form of adjustment to the environment. And if we used our job to adjust, then very often the ascendant sign becomes mixed up a lot with the job and the career. It's interesting also to me how sometimes there is a missing element in the chart. No planets in earth, no planets in air, for example. One of the four elements is not represented. I actually think that this is not possible in reality, that all the elements are always there in the chart. We all have them. But this is a bit of a generalization if we want to just pick up planets in signs or planets in houses. There are many people that don't have a single planet in a sign, in an element, but they do have one of those houses which belongs to that element full. And this is compensating a lot for the so-called missing element. But when you have a missing element, it's not unusual to see that what this person is mostly prominent for and what they do in life is actually exactly that element. I have read in many places that Shakespeare had no air. I don't know if that's correct. Or a musician that has no water. Or somebody that's doing a purely practical job and they don't have any earth. There are many, many cases like this. And it seems to be some sort of compensation going on in us, in the energies. When we are lacking an element, maybe something is urging us, is pushing us into trying to develop that element and to prove ourselves out there that we actually are good in it. And I'm not convinced that a missing element means that we don't know how to do that thing. It may be just that, who knows, we can devise our own theory that we don't have that element because we're already good in that naturally. So there is no task there, there is no challenge there. It's already flowing. So we have other energies presented in the chart because we have to work on them more. We have to develop them more. I don't know. Maybe we can look at that in this way as well. Another thing could be a very strongly positioned planet. Some cases, several planets, but angular planets, which are the ones that are sitting on one of the four angles, the ascendant, the descendant, the MC, or the IC, because these points in the chart are so strong magnets of energy, they are not only attracting a lot of tension and dynamics, so things tend to happen a lot around the angles. It's a very unescapable expression. Also, it's very obvious. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if someone has an angular planet, everybody notices this quality of that planet in them. They're not able to hide it, even if it's the IC. The IC is considered to be the bottom. The bottom of the chart is considered to be the most hidden, the most private part of us. But even on the IC, planets on angles tend to express themselves very strongly. I imagine them as guardians of gates to the chart, as if our chart is a fortress, and this fortress has 4 different gates from where we can enter the city, our inner city. And if we have a planet on one of the angles, this to me is like a guardian, one that's like there at the entrance and lets you in, the first one that welcomes you. And I think those planets on the angles are easily connecting with the world, easily connecting with the other people, and we use them as our own emissaries and our own presenters, PR agents. The ascendant very much works like this. We know that already, how much the actual point of the ascendant, even if there is no planet there, works like that. But if we have planets, they modify the expression, and it becomes even more interesting. When we speak about the 3 career houses, only one of them is angular, the 10th house, and maybe that's why people tend to concentrate on that, and it's being dubbed to be the job house, because that's the most obvious. When something expresses itself in the 10th house, it doesn't remain unnoticed. There is a consequence, there is an influence, and we can really strongly see that. Many famous personalities have those planets, especially some of the planets like Jupiter or Venus or the Sun, conjunct the MC or very close to the MC. Interestingly, on both sides, not just on the 10th house side, but also on the 9th house side. If a planet is in the 9th house, but it's very close to the MC, it's even sometimes more important, more powerful in its use in the career area. Maybe it's because it's going there, it's heading in that direction, it is already attracted and trying to reach that point. When if it's already the 10th house, we're maybe already seeing the consequences of a situation which was already beneficial to start with, but the person is just using the planet to capitalize on it. Yeah. Well, in the 9th house, we have this vision, the vision of the 9th house of Sagittarian energy, looking towards expressing itself, materializing itself. So many people have that are, in a way, famous or in a high social standing or prominent planets close to the MC from the 9th house. Yeah. And finally, in this list, I'm not even touching on things like the nodes, which are extremely important, I think. The north and the south node, the position of the north node in the chart, it's not here in my list, but because I didn't want to go into evolutionary astrology too much, as this can be a major topic on its own. But a lot of what I told you in the beginning about the sun, I think can apply for the north node as well, as an idea of a safe choice. If we do the thing that the north node indicates, maybe we will not find our perfect career or a job, but we would be finding a lot of satisfaction and sense of achievement, personal achievement. But finally, on my list is an unaspected planet. And this is similar to having nothing in an element or having nothing in a sign or something like this. Something missing in a chart doesn't mean that it's not strong or it's not there. Even it could be the opposite. It's just like a thought to play with and to experiment with. Nothing in the 10th house also doesn't mean that you're never going to be famous, you're never going to be successful, or somehow noticed in what you do. But even sometimes planets there could be trouble with authorities, trouble with the world that's not giving you a chance, so that's trying to submerge your effort or to counteract your effort. So I think we have to be very careful not to take things literally and to try to observe how things are really coming out in the chart. I think I missed something here, which was the singleton planet. Do you know what's a singleton? This standing alone player in the chart. Some charts have it. I also have it, and to me this is very interesting. This is a situation when you have a lot of things, a lot of planets accumulated as a group in one side of the chart, in one of the quadrants, like at the bottom or on the east, on the west, anywhere. But then only one of them is separated. And it's either on the opposite side of all of these others. This is usually called the bucket style chart, where you've got, the bucket is this many things together, many planets together, and the handle of the bucket is the singleton planet. The singleton planet is a lonely planet, one that's very often opposing the group from another side of the chart, and is holding all the weight of that side of the chart. And when this happens, I actually imagine it more as the other name of that, which is the funnel chart. You know how the funnel is wide at the top and very narrow at the bottom where there is just one outlet. So all those planets at the top, they're kind of feeding into the funnel your main energies, what you're operating with, what you're doing. But then the expression is coming out from the singleton planet, and the singleton planet becomes the thing that realizes the potential of all the other planets in the house and in the sign that it's in. So, for example, in today's examples, I've got no such case to show you, but that's why I'm going to give you my case just as an illustration. I've got lots of things going on in the 6th house and in the 7th house. So most of my planets are in the 6th, 7th, and 8th house. But then on the opposite side of the chart, there is one Jupiter standing alone in the 12th in Aries, and it's alone there, but it's opposing the middle of the group. And when I think of it, it's not that obvious, but I tend to do and to work through the function of my Jupiter. What we're doing at the moment, these talks, you may say, but this is a 6th house activity because you've got so many things going on in the 6th house, so you feel the urge to accumulate knowledge and then to share it. And teaching is one of the things in the 6th house as well. But actually, it's the Jupiter function. This desire to go now out there. 12th house is more of a social house, and you're exposing yourself. You're not standing, behind the scenes as the 6th house is doing. I do see my choice of not just of what I do, but also how I do it. What's the concentration? My the kind of astrology that I do is more Jupiterian than Mercurial, for example. I concentrate so much more of what's the meaning of it, what's the philosophy of it, and how this philosophy can be made to, helpful more than, say the technical part or as for example, Jerry concentrates on mundane astrology. Other people may do different things. And I see the reflection of the choice in the Jupiter as a singleton planet, as Jupiter really is the expression of that, all other things going on behind the surface. Yeah, I hope that makes sense for you guys. David, this is your daughter's chart. I have hidden all the birth details from the charts, so that, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah, that's right. Except I use Placidus, so the Mercury and Chiron will be in the 8th.
Chiron will be in the 8th and Mercury. I see.
Yeah, and Jupiter, that's it. Yeah, but the rest is exactly the same. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe this is a good place to say what system I'm using. I use Campanus house system. Again, the big conversation is which system to use and so on. Again, this doesn't mean that others don't work. This is my choice. Maybe I should have done it in Placidus because it's a bit more common for everyone. But I have kind of stuck to, I'm always sticking to Campanus. In astro.com, you can choose the different systems and you can play with them, experiment with them. But this one is usually giving very slight differences from Placidus. Not a lot, as David said. It's a bit different. Which ones do you guys use? Do you have a preference for another house system?
I use Placidus personally.
You use Placidus. That's the safest choice, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just used to it. And
yeah.
I use Porphyry.
I've heard about it, but I've never used it. I think Paula.
It's similar to Campanus in the nature of it. So anyway, that's what I was taught. But it's close to Placidus too, in the way that it cuts up the houses.
Okay. Well, this is for the sake of example. When we get to your own house, if you think that something else is going on and not what this house's system is showing, then yeah, maybe I think ultimately the person can feel the best about what works right for them. We already touched on this in the beginning of how they all come to the same conclusion at the end. But when we have differences like a planet being angular, and then in the other system it's no longer angular, or in the Earth houses things change, then this may make a difference to our interpretation. But anyway, so this is what I jotted down as notes about what we discussed before as theory. Now I wanted to show you how I do it in practice. And this is just like a starting point, because ultimately I think we need to look at the whole chart, and this requires more time. We can't just do that most of you just see that chart for the first time, and you won't be able to see how all the dots connect and what could be a good idea to advise that person for their job. But let's make it a quick exercise. All of these charts today, and maybe that's why you got attracted to this topic and you decided to sign in, is because all of you have something important, either in the 10th house or in the 6th house, or something to do with these topics in your charts. So I assume this is an important matter for you. Now we see that, what is her name, Davy? What is your daughter's name?
Margot.
Okay. So Margot's got this very prominent moon on the MC, exactly conjunct. Do you see the pointer of my mouse when I'm trying to point to something? Great. Okay. So yeah, this is her moon in here, but we'll get to it. First of all, what I do is check if there are planets in the Earth houses, and with her, I've seen here that Saturn is in the 2nd, and it's very close to the cusp of the 2nd. Then we've got the moon in the 10th and nothing in the 6th. So no planet in the 6th. That's why it's just the moon in the 10th and Saturn in the 2nd. So we can immediately see that she's got some tools there to work with in the house of making money, very generally speaking, and in the house of being somehow successful out there in a more public role. So these two, we need to check what they are. She's got Saturn and the Sun, planets which are very often connected to the mother and the father image, or the mother and the father inside us, as functions. They don't always work together very easily, because these energies are very, one is very sensitive while the other is very, disciplined and so on. Many, many things we can extract as meaning here. But potentially she's got a way to integrate making money with being successful, or being successful through making money, or something like this, because there is already something going on there. And we can see the beautiful aspect, trine, between the moon and Saturn. Then the next thing that I've listed is that the moon is actually conjunct the MC. It's not just in the 10th house, it's also conjunct the MC. But we have to see that this whole thing is participating in a dynamic called the T-square. You know about T-squares, I suppose. It's this triangle forming between her Neptune and Uranus conjunction here, opposite Sun Venus, and then the moon happens to be the top of the triangle, so the expression point of the T-square. So we can already see how from many different places the moon becomes a big player in that chart. Many people would probably prioritize a planet that is culminating like this. Culminating planet means it's somewhere around the MC. As the strongest force in the chart, the guiding principle. And in her chart, the moon is the ruler of the sun. So the moon, so the sun is in Cancer. So it's a pointer back to the moon. You see that? So the moon is extremely important. David, would you like to tell us something about what she does? Is she doing something connected to anything lunar?
Anything lunar? Not really. She's she had a master degree in management and how do you call it? Management and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, she's working as a manager in internet. You know, doing internet and things like that. So
Okay.
retail, and internet. So she's, of course, at the moment, as we can see, the Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn is kind of opposite Venus and squaring. So the T-square has been activated, and she's having a lot of problem at work at the moment, which makes sense.
I was going to say that, you know, when we look at the transits and progressions, which I have around the chart here, you know, the transits, the red planets, we can see that her T-square is under a lot of pressure at the moment. It's actually just been under pressure, maybe not, it's already passing kind of thing. But she's about to have her first Saturn return. Just didn't want to, you know, diverge from the strictly work, but everything is work related ultimately in the chart. How recently, when these planets were in earlier degrees of Capricorn, they were conjunct Uranus Neptune in the first, opposite Sun Venus, and they were activating the square. Actually, the square to the moon is currently very active because the moon is in the 24th degree of Libra, while the planets are Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto are also in late Capricorn. So this square here is probably giving her a lot of trouble at work. Is she that she wants to change what she does?
Yeah, she does want to change at the moment. She's not happy anymore in the e-commerce and retail. She's working in luxury. So that's maybe the moon and Libra there, you know, the beauty of things, possibly.
Yes, I was going to ask that because later on, yes, the sign on the MC is extremely important. Libra is giving us an indication of the kind of thing, the style of thing that the job needs to include somehow, and you know, to do with harmony, aesthetics, and maybe something to do with beauty is one of the typical go-to points for Libra. And the moon being there, maybe she enjoys that. She feels good doing this sort of thing as well. So the personal gets very much mixed up with the job. I think this is someone that really takes to heart what she does. If she's not in the right job, this is going to be the cause of a lot of inner turmoil and dissatisfaction, because she cannot just separate the two and say, I'm going to go to a job and then shut the door and start my personal life. A personal life with this moon mixes up with the job so much. And beauty and aesthetics is one of the things we can suppose here. Or working one-to-one with people as well, being some sort of a advisor or I don't know, counselor, or I don't know, something which is addressing the other person's needs in a way.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember when she was really young, even before working and everything, she used to say to me, people always coming to her, and they were telling her always her problems, and she was helping them, and so, you know, she was giving advice and counseling them just naturally.
Yes.
She's very calm and patient, and she's a listener, and so she's very good for that.
Such a strong Cancerian energy going on in the chart. She's Sun in Cancer, and everything is. If we go on down the list of seeing what's going on in these houses, we can see how important the 7th house is. And what you just said, I think, has a lot to do with her concentration in the 7th house. First of all, she's got a stellium in the 7th house. Even if, you said that maybe these 2 planets are in the 8th, Mercury and Chiron, but even if they are in the 8th, the Sun is in the 7th conjunct Venus, and Venus is the ruler of the 10th house. So we can see here how, let's start by order. The ruler of the 2nd house is in the 2nd and in the 1st. So the ruler of the 2nd, Aquarius, the sign Aquarius is at the cusp of the 2nd house. So we're looking for Saturn and Uranus. That's why I've said the 2nd and the 1st. So here we're kind of going back to the same place. Saturn is at home in the 7th house here, more or less. Then the ruler of the 6th house is Taurus, going back to Venus. Venus is ruling Taurus, and Venus is conjunct the Sun in the 7th house. Yeah? And then the ruler of the 10th house is also Venus. So she's got a double Venus going on in her work department. Both the 6th and the 10th are leading us back to Venus, and Venus is in the 7th house. So maybe that's why she's such a natural advisor, helper, people person, kind of someone that people go to and is able to relate and maybe naturally interested in other people. This strong concentration in the 6th, 7th house is a natural interest in other people. And maybe to get an even fuller picture, we have to notice that the South Node is in the same place.
Yeah.
She's born naturally knowing how to do that. But I think that if I am to give her advice, I would say, look at what's going on in the 1st house. Use your Saturn return very wisely. Use now the time of around the 30s that she's going to probably change things a lot and restructure things a lot. This 7th house is not going to work for her automatically. So obviously, because the South Node is there, wherever we have our South Node, we're very good in this thing naturally, but it doesn't pay off. Not straight away. We need to work on the North Node before the South Node opens the door to any sort of satisfaction, success, reward, and so on. And because we see that all her career pointers lead us back to the 7th house, and the 7th house is somehow blocked by the node because the node needs to be balanced. Maybe she's already doing that and it's working, but most of the time it's not straight away. So she may need to do some 1st house Capricorn exercises before everything starts flowing properly. Now, is there a conflict, David, between me and others, between relationship and own direction, between how she, whether she's paying enough attention to herself? Maybe she's not paying enough attention to herself, is what I would.
She got a lot of problem to do things on her own.
But things as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole, for anything she does, she needs to have someone next to her or with her. She finds it very hard. And that's probably the moon in Libra as well, probably. And also a lot of planets in the 7th.
And lots of planets in the 7th.
Yeah, so, and so it's a Libra thing. So she needs probably to go towards, like you just said, Capricornian side and to start learning to do things probably more on her own.
Exactly.
To establish herself and,
Mm-hmm. Some sort of independence is calling for in this chart.
Yeah.
She would eventually have to apply her skills in the 7th house, but because of all this nodal axis involvement and also the energy of partnership is very strong. Like she's got the Cancer, which Cancer is so sensitive to emotional exchanges with, especially with her partner, I guess, and with questions around having children, or maybe, I don't know if you mentioned, whether I heard right, that this may become a big issue for her at some point, because she's a Cancer and the moon is connected to that topic as well, to the connection with the sun. It's a sun-moon square. It's not easy. You know, I don't know if she's somehow projecting some issues she may have had with you and with her mother earlier on in childhood, because you know how Cancer children are very, very sensitive to early on.
Very sensitive. Very, very sensitive.
I don't want to be literal here, but very often a child with sun moon square is somehow needing more time to overcome a rift between the parents. And maybe she's got nothing to do with that rift, but she's somehow internalizing it. And then not making a distinction between her own moon and her own sun later on, and having this sense of conflict between the two. And this is going to impact the work, because one of those two luminaries is on the MC. And rather than her being able to escape in the job and kind of take a bit of rest while going to work from personal issues and from personal dilemmas and struggles, the opposite happens. They are being activated through the work. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we don't obviously have the time to go into a lot of detail.
No, of course.
I think in general, it could be a good idea to list things like this when you're working on a chart, because you see how patterns start emerging this way. You know, we see, for example, that everything is leading back to the first 7th house axis, and that this person needs to work on balancing this axis before whatever potential their material houses is hiding, you know, the 2nd, the 6th, and the 10th can be unleashed and can be used. Yeah. So she's also got this Sun conjunct Venus. You know, Venus is the ruler of both of the work houses in her case. So one more reason to pay attention to the Sun also in this chart. The Sun conjunct. I have a feeling she's going to be all right later on. It's just when you have such a strong lunar energy, my personal opinion is that we take longer to overcome everything that's to do with up to Saturn return issues. And we're very confused before the 30s. And later on, we really find a way to integrate our own energies. But we need to go through a lot of mess in family and in relationships. And I think mostly her difficulties will be with one-to-one partnerships. Yeah. Because of that.
She's talking at the moment to open her own business, so.
Well, you see, isn't that very good for North Node in Capricorn in the first house?
Yeah.
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, so it's really good, I think.
Yeah, well, her nodes are not aspected, if you have noticed that. She's got unexpected nodes. To me, these are people that are like starting from scratch somehow, almost like a new soul or a new, it hasn't got a lot of karmic burdens there to resolve, but it's still difficult to work with the North Node straight away. She needs to just be, I think, courageous enough. Yeah? Courageous enough to not constantly think that she needs the help of another person or the approval of another person. That's alone. And the moment she tries that, I think she'll be surprised that she's actually quite good in it.
And she's always been extremely lucky to find a job and for studies. So I think everything is going like really easily. She's very, very lucky.
And did she try to mature too quickly? Because this moon in the 10th house is probably subject to this temptation to jump into a job too quickly before having found yourself, so that you can appease your anxiety, because we are all anxious in the moon department. Yeah, and when you do a job, you feel like now things are under control in a way. But later, I think she probably is one of those people that can get into the trap of the 10th house. You know, did I choose the right career? Is that the right thing to me?
Always she's asking that question. Is that all the time? She never stopped asking that herself, this question.
Yes. Okay, let's move on so that we have a chance to look at, at least the ones that you hear. Next one, I don't remember what was the next one. Ellen, we don't have Ellen with us, so I'll skip it for now. Yvette, this is yours. Do you want to say something?
That was actually my chart previously.
I'm sorry, Jerry.
Go ahead, but I just want to let you know, but that looked a lot like my chart. I think that was my chart.
The previous one, this one.
Yes. No. Oh, no. Never mind.
By the way,
okay.
Some of the charts really look like each other a lot.
Yeah, it looked very similar. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I definitely have yours as well. I think it's coming next after Yvette. So yeah, but I was also surprised how similar things are going on in the charts of today. This is Yvette's chart. Do you want to say something before I do, or I don't know if you have any questions before I start with my comments? You're muted. I can't hear you. Let me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was looking at changing careers at this late stage of my life, but yeah. So I was interested. That's why I was interested in looking at the chart to see. I don't want to make a wrong choice. So.
Okay. Well, let's jump straight to the point then. That you've got all those transiting and progress planets, both transiting and progress planets, right on your MC at the moment. Not surprisingly, you're trying to, go into a different direction at the moment. You're pushed by your most significantly, the progress sun is on the MC. It is always a very big event in someone's life when the progress sun is changing signs or changing houses. This is extremely significant because it's so slow. It travels through the chart. This one. This is your progress sun. I don't know. Are you familiar with the progressions, Yvette? Have you studied progressions in astrology before?
No, I'm a fledgling. I'm just a real beginner.
It's something to look at. I mean, we won't be able to go too much into it now, but you can take note and look at that in your own time, and investigate the progress sun. This is a technique in astrology which is following your development throughout life. This is something very personal. It's like your progress planets are the changing positions of your personal planets. Not really. I mean, this is not a real change that you can see, but I'm more than happy to speak to you separately about this because I don't want to take too much time with this. But this progress sun is like an adjustment sun. Yeah, the sun that's not your real one. You can very briefly look at it this way. Your real sun is in Scorpio. And from the time when you were born, the progressed sun, the green one, was traveling this way, only 1 degree per year, very slowly. And it only covered that distance from here to here, and that's it. And at some point, it crossed from Scorpio to Sagittarius, and this was when you were 32 years old, more or less. Maybe you remember something significant as a turning point in your life when you were 32. People always do when their progress suns change sign. It's a big shift normally, and then for another 30 years, it was traveling through the 9th house of the chart. So actually, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. It was when you were 32, it switched between the 8th house and the 9th house. But it went to Sagittarius when you were 2 years old, very young. Anyway, so now you are at the brink of a similar shift. When your progress sun is not just changing position, but it's right on the top of your chart, on the MC career point. And this must be a lot of inner personal pressure to revisit your work, whatever it is, and to want to go into a different direction now, or not to be satisfied with what you're doing right now. And what the chart is and these progressions are just confirming for you is that this is a good time to make that shift, that this is a natural time. There will be no way to escape that. Even if you decide to stay put and not change the job, this is ultimately your decision, and the chart is not telling you what to do. But some changes are due now. So the choice here is rather between, do you initiate that, or do you wait for the situation to change on its own? And if you do wait, it will change anyway. That's guaranteed. But maybe it will not change in the direction that you would want to change it. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it's a great ripening point of very, very potential. There is a lot of potential to do something with this area now. And okay, well, it may be activating family issues at the same time, because in your chart, your 10th house is not just there on its own and empty and nothing happening and not connected very much with other things, but your 10th house of career is very intertwined with personal life, the moon in Cancer in the opposite 4th house, and they are also part of a T-square with the 7th house and the 6th house with this Venus here. So everything is basically your personal life, your relationships, and your work. They're all in the same pot, in the same melting pot. So when you change one, all the others are also automatically activated. So you may want to explore, not to mention all the transiting planets on your MC at the moment, not just the progress sun, but you've got Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn. It's a lot. The timeline of your life was always scheduled at this age to get these transits and these progressions. Yeah? So it's not like we don't need to be fatalistic about it. There is nothing good or bad happening here. It's just you happen to be at a very important age at the moment, a turning point age. Not everyone at your age is having so much to change and so much to reform in the career / house, home area, because it's not just your career. I think whatever changes you need to do, your home situation will be transformed as well.
Right.
Is it?
True.
Going in that direction?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's very true. My home is very intertwined, my family life, with the change that I'm going to make with my work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, here is something to explore. I mean, this is really the most important thing I have to say to you is this is the right time to look for advice, help in any way possible, because this is eventually going to pass as a period, and you need to somehow, I think, take advantage of also so many things going on in your chart at the moment in this area to just stir it in the right direction. Yeah, especially Jupiter. Jupiter is already going away. Kind of this Jupiter, it's a mixture of things going on. It's not just Jupiter, but Jupiter is this temporary opening door or opening window of opportunity. And it is traveling to your 10th house this year for 1 year. And it's only going to be there for several months. So 1 year is not a long time. And yes, there is a lot of pressure from Pluto, from Saturn. Things are probably not easy to organize and to change so quickly. But you also have Jupiter there. And Jupiter is a potential helper if you know how to take advantage and if you're proactive. Jupiter is never going to give us good luck just if we're sitting and not doing anything. But if you try to ask for things and to ask for opportunities, this is a very good period to be given that. Yeah, for things to be possible to happen. But if you don't act in the next year, then that's going to pass and may not be. You're just wasting the opportunity, kind of thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
But otherwise, yeah, we can see that in this chart, if you read through this, how all the career houses are very connected to each other. The ruler of the 2nd is in the 6th. The ruler of the 6th is still in the 6th. So many things are making this question of work so important for you. What do you do?
Right now, I'm in the investment industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get out of this rat race. I want a different life, a slower, less stressful life.
Mm-hmm. Mars on the MC is a big fighter in society, in big business, for example. This probably has given you a lot of stamina, a lot of, ability to exist in that world, in that very competitive world. Mars in the 10th house is often connected to success, to financial success, and because the person just has this potential to exist in that among the sharks, and to survive in a way.
Yes, but I'm over that now. I needed a change.
Yes, I can imagine. You're entering a new stage of your life, literally, according to the chart. So, some other planet needs to be given priority. I don't know which one, but we can look deeper. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Vet, I'm moving on to the next one.
Okay.
I hope this was at least partially.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Now the other direction. Zoe, are you still with us? Could you just maybe give me a thumbs up or something in the chat box if you want me to discuss it? Sorry guys, I'm just trying to open my chat box here. Okay, we will touch on Zoe's chat, but now I want to go to Jerry's because he's with us.
Yes, thank you.
So I will. At the same time, you guys cannot see the notes here, but maybe Jerry can run us through it if you want to.
Sure.
So Jerry, you've got 6th house, quite prominent, and you've got Saturn in the 2nd, and Pluto on the MC. That's very interesting.
Right.
How do you relate to that? Do you want? I mean, you don't have to speak if you don't want to, but I was just curious how the chart comes alive.
Yeah. Well, I've had a fairly successful career in serving others, essentially in marketing and advertising, which is mass communications. So the Moon Pluto complex, and for businesses. So that's Saturn in the 2nd house.
Yeah.
In its rulership. So that all makes sense. Emotionally, I do put a lot of effort in my career and job. And, from the point of view of Pluto, I have had a fair amount of notoriety. And having worked for a big business that's been both good and bad, I've had pushback, and I've also had, reward as well. So it's all very interesting.
I find your chart as a perfect example of a dynamic between the work houses. You've got this beautiful trine, the grand trine, and not only in earth houses, but also in earth signs. So you seem to be very comfortable in that energy and able to use it, because Saturn in Capricorn in the 2nd, Moon in Taurus in the 6th, and Pluto in Virgo in the 10th. So I count it in the 10th. I know it's probably technically in the 9th, but what I said earlier, I think is probably, the magnetic pull of the 10th house, I think, is so strong that your Pluto is being put into it, and it's not really that much in the 9th. But I don't know. Isn't that the perfect configuration for entering the world of work, business, and so on? Being able to operate there and to be efficient there. So you've got a grand trine in Earth on both cases, in both signs and houses, which is, I think, very interesting. How is your Piscean sun feeling, that Earth?
That's a really good question. And it works fine. It's just that I have, some reservations about working in that realm, because I approach everything from, my internal sun from a mystical side of things. So, you know, being in the world of, you know, big business and all of that, I kind of look at it as, well, that's just the material world, and I'm also very interested in the, you know, spiritual and mystical side at home, right? So, and you notice the Neptune opposition to the moon in that kite. So that's, you know, and Neptune's in the 12th, right? So that part of me is hidden, and I have to work between that emotional and mystical side at the same time.
Yes, yes. And astrology is providing a very good channel, I guess, for the sun and descendant energies and the Neptune in the 12th. And could balance things out. Could you see, because you mentioned your interest in mundane astrology, now I can see how these two can combine here. Because a lot of people I've noticed that have strong earth in their charts are more inclined to mundane astrology, because it gets us into these, you know, predictive cycles, and maybe watching the financial world and financial astrology as well as part of you know, mundane astrology. And I can see where this is coming from, because you're like combining the two fields. How can you understand mundane astrology if you don't have the background of what's going on out there and the participation, so that you can connect the two? Maybe that's a way to connect the two, because through astrology, which is more, I think ultimately astrology is a Neptunian science. That's my take on it. Not that much Uranian, also Uranian, but in another perspective, but mostly Neptunian. And you're so Neptunian at the same time, and you can kind of combine and bridge the two areas and make it maybe obvious to other people that they're not that distinct, that we need to materialize spirit and spiritualize matter, if you see what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
You know, in a way. So
right.
Both of them are enriched.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah. I think it's interesting that you think that astrology is more Neptunian, because most people say that Uranus and Aquarius are the astrological rulers. So I think that's fascinating. Yeah, well, okay. No, that's great. I like hearing that.
I would like to point to thanks for asking this. I was going to share it because we recently had a discussion on Uranus, and we touched on this a little bit, but I forgot at the time to share this article by Dane Woodger about why. You know, he's saying that. When I read it, I realized that he's got a point. This is a pretty strong point. I don't know if you guys will agree with that as well, but it's here. I'm not sure.
I haven't studied Dane Woodger very much, but I'm glad you're pointing in that direction, because it seems, because he has a lot of written material.
A lot, yes.
And he was an amazing individual.
Absolutely, I agree. Not everyone relates to him that much. He's not easy to read. I've got a personal, I just feel very attracted to his writings and to his teachings and so on, but I'm not he's not the only one I read, but definitely a very big contribution to astrology, and one of the smartest. To me, he's a teacher of everybody else, and others just taking their own fields and their own specialties. But I think if you are an astrologer and you haven't read Woodger, something is always missing. Something is not right. So at least for information, just for basic information, I think everyone needs to touch on this. So, okay, I will go to, I think I'll find it easily. So that's the one. Does Uranus rule astrology? That's a brilliant article. It's very short. And here he's explaining why it's Neptune. Actually, not that Uranus is not, but for the essence of what astrology is as a purpose, is what we do with it and what it's really about. This more the inclusiveness of how through astrology, we realizing that we're all connected and we have the same energies, even though they are kind of distributed in a different way, is one of the main points here. So I will try to share that with you in the chat box if I manage to later on. But yeah, you got it here. So you can.
That's very good. Thank you. I wrote it down. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. So we go back to the presentation. Jerry, I wanted to just tell you finally on your chart that I'm sure you have come to this conclusion yourself, but this grand trine in Earth, people say can be very such an easy thing, kind of an easy thing to grab and to use, which is the good part of it, the positive part of it. But it can also distract us from other things in the chart that we need to work on. Because, it kind of takes away from the solar motivation or from something else. And you probably needed time to get to this Neptunian side of your interests. Because it was so easy and natural to operate in the Earth department for many years. Could you confirm that? I was curious if you can confirm that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm 61 now, and I've worked very hard in my career, and now I want to pull back and think more about the spiritual side of things. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about that a lot more. Yes.
But because you didn't have any major squares or oppositions to Earth energies, to Earth houses and work, which to make them difficult to develop, you probably didn't have like the same motivation as Yvette had to pull away from it, like radically pull away from it. But it may be more possible for you to combine the two.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I do.
Because the trine is something that you can use, and you can be useful to others with that trine as well. You don't have to. Nothing in that chart is kind of signifying that you need to distance yourself completely from your easiness in the Earth department.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the progressed MC is now on my Neptune.
Mm-hmm.
Now, anyways, so
yeah.
In the other charts. So yeah, that all makes sense.
And the transiting Neptune is on your Sun, which is kind of waking up the Sun. And
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's see whether we can touch on a little bit on Casper and Zoe as well.
Thank you very much.
We already passed 6:30. I'm happy to stay until 7 if you also want to. Yeah, okay. So we give a bit of attention to the rest of it. There are only 2 or 3 more charts, and we can. Casper, are you still with us?
Yep.
Great. You're not on my screen, so you're kind of in the background. We've looked at your chart before, but not that much in terms of career. So prominently here, I can see, and I'll leave you to say, something about it if you want. This Venus on the MC, another planet on the MC. There wasn't a single chart so far without planets on the MC. And Casper has Venus. And opposite Pluto. Pluto is on the IC. And it's a very prominent, not that obvious, but it's a very prominent Jupiter in this chart. So we've got, going one by one, we've got the ruler of the the ruler of the second is the Sun. And the Sun is in Taurus, in the 11th house. So you see how the ruler of the second, which is normally the second house related to Taurus, is the Sun in Taurus. So the Sun in Taurus, Casper, is very important to, this money earning thing in your chart, in your life as well. The job of earning money that you had before and is probably still going on is not surprisingly something that you were able to use well. Then the ruler of the 6th is actually a bunch of planets. So the 6th house cusp is very busy in this chart. It's got the Moon conjunct North Node and conjunct Neptune. Yeah? in Sagittarius, and the ruler of that is Jupiter. While Jupiter is the only planet making an aspect to the Sun-Mercury pair in the chart. So this is just because I've had the chance. We've had a couple of consultations with Casper already, so I know him better. So I have a chance to know a little bit better how all these things connect in the chart. So the 6th house is extremely important, and it leads back to the 10th house, and it leads back to the Taurus Sun, and to the 2nd house, and the nodes are not aspected, which is also very interesting, I think. Not very much. I don't count Chiron in this case, but yeah. What would you say, Casper? What do you think in this case? Any questions?
No. Well, as you know, I don't have a great deal of let's say understanding about exactly how these things impacted, other than what we've talked about, which always has been very, very true. So I don't know. Do you mean in terms of how I see the chart, or do you mean in terms of the work situation?
If you maybe if you want to share with others about Venus on the MC, because I think this is standing out quite a lot. We have a little bit touched on this, I think, in the past, of how you were able to. You see, when we have a planet on the MC, people see us through that planet. They see that planet in us. I don't know if you have been identified, for you, Yvette, for example, if you have been identified as a very Martian person by people around you, whether you, Jerry, have been identified as someone very Plutonian, in what you do. With Davy's daughter, we have the moon, so maybe she's perceived as very sensitive or very, caretaking when she goes out in the world. And here we've got Venus, yet another planet. And Casper is someone quite attractive, someone quite, vocal, in a way, how can I say, eloquent, very well outspoken, well-spoken person. So Venus is really on your MC, Casper. This is visible. It is there. It's one of the greatest tools you've got to. So the planet of attraction is on your MC, and it's also the planet of money by many definitions. And this ability to be somebody that people perceive as someone interesting, somebody they are perceiving as attractive, and being able to then give a carte blanche to share your ideas, or to give you authority, to give you a responsibility, the 10th house. As far as authority is concerned, you may be one of the favorites. Some people are completely not favorites in terms of authority. They are maybe someone having Sun square the MC, or nothing in the 10th house, or something more obscure going on in the 10th house. But in your case, it's the opposite. It's like potential for attracting help by other people that are Venusian. People that are famous, beautiful, attractive, wealthy, whatever. Is there something like this going on in your life?
Big time. I mean, you pretty much nailed it. So I mean, my natural skill, if you like, which is not something I have to work at all, is just kind of a natural. I'm very good at inspiring people and getting things started. And one of the things I enjoy the most, and I've referenced this to some of the other people whose charts you've done previously, is that I really like to work with other people. I don't like to be given the role of authority. I feel deeply uncomfortable with that. But I naturally, let's just say, assume it or inspire people to do it. But then I want them to run off and do their own thing.
Yes.
So I think I'm very good at kind of inspiring people and getting things started. I've just been with a whole bunch of MBA students for whom I did a presentation a few months ago, and they all said, "I want to come and work for you. You don't have to pay me a salary," because just the way you speak and the way you present and the ideas you have, I find that more inspiring than a salaried job.
Yes.
So that's kind of my skill, I suppose.
For many different points in the
And I love. I mean, apropos with some of the others, I really like empowering others. So I'm finding all the people I've worked with, whether they are students, university students, or people that have been juniors in the various companies I've been at, I'm always finding them positions. I'm always hiring into the companies I consult for, and they continue subsequently. I find that hugely rewarding.
Absolutely.
But that's perhaps also a challenge, that you sometimes you drift too much and you just sort of enthusiastically start something with a great deal of motivation and get everybody on board, and it becomes a hugely glorified thing that everybody thinks is going to be the next Amazon, only then to get bored very quickly and run off to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've talked so much about this, and I just noticed, which may be something new for you, that similar to how Jerry has the Grand Trine in Earth, you've got the Grand Trine in Fire. And the enthusiastic energy of fire, this, the starter of projects, the one that's inspiring others and so on. This is coming a lot from the fire, and you've got a very strong Jupiter in the chart. Jupiter is extremely strong. If you look closer into this chart, you will discover that Jupiter is making aspects with everything. It is the ruler of the big conjunction of Moon here, the Moon with Neptune and the North Node, and they're in the 6th house. So it's all like a mixture where when you start doing some work, a project, a 6th house project, it is very Sagittarian, so fiery, inspiring. This is connected to Jupiter also by aspect, with the ruler of that whole dynamic, and it's activating the Grand Trine in fire. And it's from many different directions. But also I wanted to add the Venus on the MC, going back to it a little bit, what you shared with us about cooperation with others, not necessarily being the leader, the solo leader in something, but this exchange that Libra is so good in, balance with others is the ultimate harmonizer. And that's the kind of role that you're mixing leadership with harmonizing, because Venus is in Aries. Your Venus is in Aries, so they feel attracted to you as a potential leader. But then you are acting, it's Venus, so it is very easy for it to get those people that want to be led. Yeah, the other side kind of thing. Because with Venus, we've always got two sides going on.
You mentioned something last time as well when we, which is very interesting, that the Venus always kind of sits there and ensures a success. So whatever you decide to do, it'll succeed. You'll find investors, you'll find participants, partners, buyers, etc. And I've had tons of different jobs because I get bored very quickly and change. I get inspired very quickly, and every single one of them, it's very, very easy to kind of get it off the ground and get it started. So it's as if there's someone sitting there going, okay, what the big challenge is then to find. And again, this is very vis-a-vis what you said earlier, to especially the daughter of David, I think it was. That the key is to try and find something that harmonizes between, let's say, your intellectual interests and something that's aligned with your values, to use a kind of cliche. Because until then, it'll just be a series of a sequence of individual things never really fulfilled, until you get that sort of match between what you truly want to do, and those are especially true in terms of working for people who let's say their energies are not right. So people who are, for example, very authoritarian, people who don't deserve the role that they're in, or who have a kind of, let's say, dark or negative energy. I find that extremely difficult. I cannot just do a job for the money, however many of those that I have actually done, but I just resign very quickly. Those don't work out. Even if they're very prestigious jobs and positions and so on, it it never happens. It never succeeds properly, or it doesn't last very long.
Actually, you're making a very good point, which even I disregarded, about the Venus connection with values. We touched on this, but we very often forget it. We straight away assume success, financial success, and so on. But you are very right that with this Venus there on the MC, you've got the dilemma of combining your personal values, Venus, which, by the way, rules your Sun in Taurus. And only then in the 11th house, the Sun can function and participate in groups and give something to the groups and so on, if you get it right with the Venus in the 10th. And get the investments directed towards the right goals and to the right causes and so on, rather than just, as you said, for money-making purposes. Yeah, well, the Sun, even though your Sun is in Taurus, it can never be that selfish because it's in the 11th house. And that, for me, is an illustration of how important the houses are. If we think, oh, he's a Taurus, he would be just interested in getting money for himself. But actually, I think the main motivation here is more 11th house than Taurus. Is it, Casper?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the way I look at it is I find it very hard to separate them.
Yeah.
Like I can't separate values and way of life and work. I think the vast majority of people just do work because they have to. I've never, ever been able to do that, irrespective of where I was in my career. I'm completely unable to do a job with people or because of the contents of it that holds no, that doesn't resonate with, or has no deeper value, if you like. I mean, whether it's investment banking at a prestigious bank, so on and so forth, just after a year, it's kind of, you've ticked that box, you've proven it, I'm out of here. I find it very difficult to distinguish between, let's say, money and hobby. It has to combine. But then again, nor do I want to do a job without getting paid. I mean, money is super important to me, but not as an end result. I could never just do it for, and then I'd be much happier to just pursue something.
It's rather feeding into the imagination of those projects that your Sagittarius energy or Jupiter energy or other things are probably planning on and wanting to do, and that's what you need the money for, and to support a certain lifestyle, I guess, not for the sake of security, which is a typical Taurus second house. So it's not getting the money because that would give you more of a peace of mind, as many people motivated by second house do that. But it's more to do with opening the door to the big opportunities.
Exactly. It's what you can use them for. It's both lifestyle, in terms of, that's very Taurian, I suppose, lifestyle, which has to be in luxury, because you just enjoy it, just pure and simple. But more importantly, that, when you go out and raise the capital, that it's being used for the right project, and it's about the realization of that rather than for the sake of having, as you say, comfort and security and a big house.
Yes, sure. All right. Well, we've got a couple more to go. If you wish to take a look, I wanted to do Zoe because Zoe is with us. She's not going to speak, but we can. Zoe, you can listen to us rambling about your charts and trying to figure things out without your feedback, which is not the best way, probably. But yeah, let's try to give Zoe a bit of feedback as well on this. Another planet in the 10th house. Now we've got the Sun in the 10th house. And it's here it's very literal, I guess. To me, this means that what she's here for as a solar mission, as a solar path, has to somehow involve getting out there and making a contribution which is significant enough to be recognized by the wider public. So how exactly you're going to do that, Zoe? I know you are an astrologer as well, so that makes it kind of makes sense that this Cancer Sun in the 10th house could be a therapist, could be maybe some sort of a helper in any way through astrology or through other things, a psychologist. But you need to get wider attention to your work. You can't just, like me, like I'm concentrating on consultations and one-to-one work because I'm all about 6th house and 7th house, and maybe 10th house is not going to work that much. But in your case, I think even if you do consultations and private, things that would they need to somehow feed onto your more public, achievement. You could write for magazines, or you can give interviews, or you can be part of platforms which are wider platforms in many ways, many scenarios. I don't want to be very specific here, but this sun needs to dare to go out and to show itself. And I guess this is not easy because we know how shy and private the Cancerian energy can be. And you have the North Node there as well. So the North Node is always not that easy to try to, invest in. We are scared of it. We're scared we're not good in it, but we actually are. So you have a history, evolutionary astrology, karmic history, in the 4th house. So being more behind the scenes, not wanting to be public, not wanting to be, probably doesn't come natural, but there is a lot of potential there. That's what the chart is telling us, that there is something there for you, which you need to explore and you need to try to, somehow work with, I guess. I wish I could see the chat where you may be writing something, but I don't know why I'm not able to start that. Sorry. We're back to Zoe. And there is also quite a big concentration on the 2nd house in this chart, because the sun and the moon are both very, prominent. The moon, here we've got something opposite going on to David's daughter's chart, where the moon was the ruler of the sun. Here we've got, the sun is in Cancer, and the moon is in Sagittarius. The moon is in the 2nd house. So the moon in the 2nd house is probably having the issue of security, as it may want very badly and very, on everyday basis. This moon may want to first make sure that there is enough money and there is enough resources there, and then try to risk it and do something more ambitious in the 10th house. I don't know if I'm right here, but it's possible. It's possible to be the case. For the moon to need to achieve security and stability before wanting to be more speculative in a way, with something more ambitious. Any impressions from you guys about the chart of Zoe? Pluto on the ascendant is very interesting.
Yeah, Pluto, that's what I was going to look at, is Pluto on the ascendant. That's really interesting. And in the chat, she says, I've been a nurse for over 10 years and now a stay-at-home mother. Mm-hmm. I'm a writer and working towards being a Jungian analyst. So wow. Pluto on the ascendant, yes.
Yes. Well, thanks for reading me this. I don't know why I can see the chat at the moment. I'm probably not. I try to click on it, but it doesn't come up. So, here it is. I have it. So yes, thank you, Zoe. This all makes sense, isn't it? It seems like you're still and you have been so far in your South Node territory, down there in the 4th house. Nothing wrong with it. It's just that at some point, I believe the 10th house needs to emerge. And maybe when you feel qualified enough, also the moon in the 2nd house is probably trying to qualify, to get the resources in terms of knowledge, certificates, whatever, something tangible there, before you go out and say, I'm now ready to claim my public role and claim my public involvement. Yeah? I don't know if this is the way you're thinking and why. Yes, she says yes. Okay. Well, great. Any questions, Zoe? I can see now what you're writing, so if you want to touch on something else.
Well, writing and, and psychoanalysis, particularly the Jungian version of it, seems to fit very well with what you were saying about being behind the scenes and that sort of Cancerian personality. It allows you to to work somewhat introverted and from a distance. You don't even have to put your name on things anymore. But on the other hand, you have this amazing scope these days to distribute the things that you're doing online. I'm thinking of and digitally.
Yeah,
So I mean, those seem to be, the right. If you were to devise a strategy for doing it, that seems very appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Well, Zoe has the sun in the 10th, which means that there is a lot of potential of realizing the potential. If you work as an analyst, probably you are one step ahead, potentially. It's all potential. You may not do anything with it, I think, but you could potentially have a wider influence with the sun in the 10th house. And if you want to, try that at some point later on. And also, I think it's very conductive of becoming, with this Venus in the 11th, becoming part of a wider circle of people, maybe a group of Jungian analysts later on, and you stimulate each other as an institution, becoming part of an institution, so that this can propel you into this influence, wider influence. Not doing it on your own, but kind of, yes, you are the private counselor that is working with your clients, with your people that you analyze, but then you are also part of a big organization that's supporting the channels of constantly working on it and having the participation out there. And so, Zoe is saying.
And then I would also, perhaps I would add that combining, I'm a great believer that the narrow confines of the way we used to think about jobs and specialization and training is very passé, because changes are occurring so fast, and things that used to be, let's say, the entrenched theory or operating dogma, or whatever you want to call it, is being revised so rapidly. So anyone who is able to combine different things, particularly things that were typically perhaps contrasted in the past, so let's say science and art, or whatever you want to say. So this notion of being able to combine psychoanalysis, okay, I appreciate Jungian is heavily esoteric in some respects, but using astrology with psychology, I think, is a very powerful combination. Yeah. So you have, there are elements of science in both of them, and there are elements of interpretation. So this constant bridging of those two, if you can, I think those who are able to do that, combine those contrasting things, I think is a very powerful tool. And then secondly, being integrity. So I'm a great believer that sort of the new world we are heading towards is personal stories and integrity. So the more you can use your own story, even if you do it anonymously, but to the extent that you can use your own story honestly about how you reached a place, or how you're making an analysis, or how something has helped you, I think is increasingly powerful in terms of conveying something and establishing a reputation.
Exactly what you're saying, Casper, I think has to do with what Zoe is writing here, that it may be a good idea to work with families, not just individuals. And you see how this can very well translate in her nodal axis, 4th house, 10th house, and the sun in the 10th house. So it could be also sharing your own personal experience and emotions, Cancer, to influence groups of people, and especially starting from families, because the 4th and the 10th are the parental houses in astrology, the parents and the family dynamics. They are going on a lot. And I know, Zoe, that you shy away from public, from fame and from exposure. This is very natural with the North Node in the 10th house. But that's, I think, some effort needs to be made to expose yourself, because the chart just signifies that you have a lot to contribute in exactly that way. Otherwise it will be lost potential. It doesn't need to be public all the time, I think. I have noticed, for example, the famous astrologer Liz Green, you probably all read her and know her and so on, and how she's a very private person, a Virgo, with Scorpio ascendant, and generally doesn't give a lot of interviews, is not very much in the public eye, but she has achieved a lot of public fame through her writing, mostly through her writing. Yeah, she's done lecturing and so on, but Zoe also mentioned writing. So it could be a way to get famous without getting in front of the public face-to-face kind of thing. Yeah? Or you can nowadays, as Casper said, you can do that online, or you can still be a public personality without being allowing your privacy to be interrupted too much. And Cancer doesn't like that, isn't it? Cancer doesn't like intrusion into their privacy. Yeah, I'm trying to read what you say, Zoe. Your book is about individuation within families. So you're already writing the book. That's great.
That's great. That's combining nursing and
Exactly.
and psychology. So just what Casper was saying, combining those, that's really great. That's awesome.
You're on the right path.
And I think a child born with a Libra ascendant in a family, they usually here to balance within that family, with their own family, to find an equilibrium. And especially with Pluto there, it's like a transformation within their own family. So maybe that's why she's implying it, that in the, their next, in her job now with the writing, and especially with the Sun in Cancer as well.
Zoe's saying that she's always trying to work with her Venus in Leo, and we can see the square to Chiron, and how we normally connect Chiron with the healing, any sort of healing practices. I think this may be interesting to explore as well, how her Venus in the 11th is connected to Chiron as well. And yeah, it says the whole chart. It's not just one thing, but how things always lead us to the same conclusion at the end.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Chiron, because there's that yod there with Pluto and Neptune to Chiron, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that easy to notice, but it's there, yes.
Yeah.
Chiron is the expression point of the yod, yeah. And in the 7th house, both Jung and Freud have their sons in the 7th house. I don't know if you've noticed that. And a lot of concentration. So people that work as therapists, and they're very interested in other people and in the workings of the psyche of another person and helping another person one-to-one, almost always have something prominent going on in the 7th house, I've noticed. And here there's Chiron in the 7th. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's trine to the sun too, so it's all working.
It's exactly trine the sun. I didn't notice that. Yeah, very, very good point there. Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, we can go on like this forever. There is only one more chart, which we don't need to. It's Alti's chart, Altinai. Maybe some of you know her. She's not with us today because she's traveling, but she signed up. So if you want to very, very quickly take a look. And there is something very interesting around here. That's why I wanted to show it to you. I would leave you to notice it, even though I wrote it down, but...
Chiron is the second, no?
Sorry, David?
Chiron is the second? No? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, it's that Neptune and Saturn on the MC. That's really interesting.
Yes. So interestingly, it's Saturn in Capricorn on the MC exactly. So it's like a triple Capricorn or triple MC. I don't know how to call it. But it's like we're being given the three things, a repetition 3 times of the same thing. Autumn is very young. She's in her early 30s. And she's not really stuck in a particular career. She hasn't really chosen, she's a musician, very good musician, but more experimental. And she's not kind of on a career path, as far as I'm, my impression is. But very attracted to music and to arts related to that. And I think this is probably an undiscovered territory. That Saturn on the MC, something that may come up later in life. as a vocation, because it's quite strong. But Saturn is also an obstruction of a kind, so we don't feel very good in the Saturn area, at least in the beginning, isn't it? And she may feel like she's not. Then maybe I'm trying to make the point that she may be underestimating herself. Well, actually, there is a lot to be developed there. In this chart, we see very concentrated energies in the 12th house. All these 3 planets, personal planets, Sun, Mercury, and Venus, are exactly in the same degree. Not just conjunct, but exactly in the same degree in Aries. And she's got them in an exact sextile to Mars in the same degree. So see, Mars in 14 something, and then the Aries planets are also in the same degree. So this is a very powerful personal integration, I would say, potentially. But I think she's still struggling to find her strength and her focus. And I think Saturn is a focusing agent in the chart, in every chart. You know, Saturn is helping us to kind of calmly sit down and think about how to make it happen, how to realize our energies. And maybe she's just struggling with Saturn becoming that agent. And the moment it does, it can be a very, very powerful chart. South Node in the 6th, Chiron in the 2nd. So Chiron in the 2nd may be part of the underestimation. You know, her own sense of value and how much she thinks she's capable and skillful. She may underestimate that because of Chiron in the 2nd, I think. Possibly. What else? Do you discover something else which I'm not seeing?
Well, I think it's interesting that Neptune and Saturn are there on the MC, and you could say that Saturn modifies the Neptunian, urges. Neptune is partly about music, so
yeah.
Being very disciplined about music could be part of it. And then when you have Uranus there, that you said that she's an experimental musical artist, that makes a lot of sense.
She's composing, right? And she's composing beautiful music. So
okay, that's excellent, because it's in a square complex to that. Hard to see. Yes, to the Sun, Mercury, Venus. Exactly. Stellium, right? So she's really working on that.
Yeah, there is a pressure there, and she's at the same time very natural expression, this typical Aries. And when we have Neptune, if you imagine the mixture between Aries energies and Pisces energies, you've got somebody very naturally expressing without, I feel like she's got no complexes. She's got no, those internal dramas that many people are struggling with. She's very, I don't know what's the right word, but direct and in a very positive way. And she really shows that energy very positively. But inside, she has shared with me that maybe this is coming from this Virgo in the 6th house, South Node. Yeah, it's extra critical towards herself and not that sure and not that ambitious, straightforwardly ambitious, because I think she's not getting in touch enough with the potential for ambition, and everything remains very underneath the surface, still not realized, still not taken out. But maybe some of it is coming from the moon in Pisces in the 12th house, which is slowly finding its way through, emerging from underwater, the way I see it.
Yeah. What do you think of that Pluto in the 7th as a yod? Because that's really strong between
oh my God,
Mars and Stellium, right? So that's really close.
This is a discovery. I mean, next time I see her, I will tell her about this and I will explore it myself, because this really is a big discovery, because it's not just a yod, but it's also on the same degree as the other two sides.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's powerful. She, by the way, she's in a relationship with a boy that they danced together, so they are dance teachers together. So we've got this working with your partner situation going on,
Right.
and we may be able to find Pluto somehow there. I don't know, in the seventh house operating.
Maybe a
Um,
power struggle. Is he a
yes,
Scorpio?
no, he's a Pisces. So
Okay.
they've got this beautiful Sun Moon conjunction.
Great.
The son of the man is in the moon of the woman. So and lots of other things. But yeah, it's probably connected to other people playing the Pluto in her life somehow. Oh,
Right.
very interestingly, she's got a very Plutonian family she comes from. So both of her parents, her mother is a triple Scorpio. Sun
Oh,
is Scorpio. And the moon and the sun are in the 12th house. Her father is a Sagittarian, but he's with the moon in Scorpio in the 12th house. So both of her parents have a lot of 12th house, a lot of Scorpio. Both of them have Mars in Scorpio, as far as I remember, lots of planets in Scorpio, and a big concentration on the 12th house. So she's working with some family karma there, but I'm not
yeah.
sure exactly how this is playing out. She's very positive about it, no major drama going on, but I guess the Pluto is part of this somehow.
Yeah, could be.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, interesting.
Great chart.
Very interesting chart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out. This is really something I've been disregarding. I did register it in aspect, but the yod is a discovery. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This is all the charts I have for today.
Thank
At
you.
the end, I almost forgot. I've got some book recommendations for you, if you're interested. So this one is by Howard Sportis. Directions and Destiny in the Birth Chart. These are seminar lectures converted to books. And the first one is about vocation in this book, about profession, vocation, everything that we've been talking about today. And he's giving some very interesting examples. So very worth taking a look at that. Then I love the book by Liz Green on the sun. So this book is dedicated to the sun. You can find it on Amazon as well, on Kindle. And she's not that much concentrating on vocation, but actually the whole book is to do with how the sun is the main guiding principle of what we need to pay attention to as applying ourselves in a way. I haven't read the third one. I found it, but I haven't read it, by Brian Clark. So, all the reviews were saying that he goes in length about the earth houses and about lots of significators of career, maybe more to the point. If anyone is interested more in those direct answers of what to do, tell me what to do. I'm not sure I'm able to answer that at all to astrology, but I think this book has a lot more concrete examples. Then my favorite, Dane Rudyard, the book about houses, the astrological houses. I think if we understand the deeper meaning of the houses, the most philosophical meaning and how they connect, and they can give us more indications about if you have planets in these houses, experiences there. And these experiences are to do with, applying it somehow, usually to a job and to something you do physically. So this is my go-to book in almost every other topic, the astrological houses. And finally, something outside of astrology a bit, but I love James Hillman as well, a bit more modern author, even though he's already, not, it's a bit previous generation, so he's a little bit between now and Rudyard. And a psychologist. I think he was also a Jungian psychologist, a pioneer in his own field as well. One of the most famous books. And this book is a little bit like talking about the sun. That's how I see it. He's not saying it directly. He's talking about our daemon, our vocation and our direction. But to me, this has parallels to the sun. By the way, James Hillman's son, one of his sons, what was the name? Do you remember, Davy? What was the name of James Hillman's son, astrologer's son? James? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll find that out. It was something with K.
Can't remember, sorry.
Let me check it for you guys. Because he's very... Now, I mentioned him for a reason. James Hillman himself obviously knew a lot of astrology. He didn't propagate it. But his son is one of the best, I think, modern astrologers. And he's concentrating on developing techniques for advising big corporations and the workers that work for these corporations through astrology. He calls the method archetypal astrology. You may have heard about this. So that obviously he wants to escape the jargon of astrology so that he doesn't scare those corporate people away and somehow, bridge the gap and tell them about the archetypal meanings of things. And he has a system which is very, very interesting to look at. So,
is it Lawrence?
Lawrence, exactly. Lawrence Hillman. I'm not sure if it's, that's how it's spelled. A lot of material on the internet by him. And
archetypal coaching and consulting.
Exactly. Yeah, he's very good. I like his work. He's a Capricorn, by the way. So his approach is very Capricornian. And probably that's why he chose this application of astrology in big corporations, in the business world, and so on. And I think he's doing a lot in that direction. But that was my final word with books and many other things by James Hillman. But this one, I think, is very much to the point.
It's a great book.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Do you guys have any questions for me before we finish? No?
No, it was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will send you all an email with the recording probably tomorrow when I manage to extract it and do it properly, and the handout as well. You can see my website here for those of you who are new to what I do, and it will be great if you join us on Thursdays as well for the discussions. And come back to me if you have any questions or anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Have a great rest of weekends.
You too.
Soon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Ciao.